up, guys? Welcome to High Volume Video. I'm Keith, and today I want to share with you my top 5 first-time watches or blind buys, whatever you want to call them. But this is my list of the 5 best movies that I picked up and watched for the first time this year. I've mostly only talked about horror movies on this channel so far, so if you've been watching my channel at all, you might be a little surprised to see that I really only have one traditional horror movie on my list this year. But I think at the end of the video, I'll give some honorable mentions, so there'll definitely be some horror movies in there. And yeah, without any further ado, let's get into it.
Number 5.
Alright, number 5 on my list is going to be Wings of Desire, and this is directed by Wim Wenders, and it's from 1987. So, I watched Paris, Texas for the first time a couple years ago, and I was blown away by that movie, so needless to say, I wanted to check out some more of Wim Wenders films, and I bought this one in the last Barnes & Noble sale that they have. I think I bought this one in the summer, actually, and it kind of sat on my shelf until recently, and then I just watched it a few months ago. But just like Paris, Texas, I was equally blown away by this movie. Basically, the story is about a guardian angel who becomes infatuated with this lady trapeze artist. So the guardian angel decides to give up his wings and become mortal and kind of experience all that life has to offer, from food to coffee and cigarettes and even love, chasing after that lady trapeze artist. The cinematography is beautiful in this. It kind of dips in and out between color and black and white. And I will say it is in it's in German with English subtitles, but yeah, if you can get past the subtitles, I think this movie's great. And it's really one of those movies that makes you think about life and kind of appreciate the little things a little more, like I said, like food, coffee, cigarettes, love, everything, all the little things in life. It really makes you think and appreciate those things. I would highly recommend this if you're a fan of just chill vibe movies that make you contemplate life in a very optimistic way.
Number 4.
Alright, number 4 on my list is Perfect Blue from 1997, directed by Satoshi Kon. I don't watch a ton of anime, stuff like this. The anime that I do watch is usually Studio Ghibli, but this is by far one of the best anime for adults movies I've ever seen. I was going to say adult animes, but that kind of sounds horrible. But yeah, so basically the story follows pop star Mimi, who's talked into switching her career path from being this pop star to acting and modeling. Just as her group starts gaining popularity and becoming successful. Now, one of her psychotic mega fans, I guess you could call him, is not happy about this choice that she makes to change careers. And I think he believes that she's kind of losing her purity as she's appearing nude on TV and filming these sexually explicit scenes. But the story really isn't nearly as straightforward as that kind of probably would lead you to believe. People around her in her circle start dying pretty quickly, and she kind of starts feeling guilty about this, because one of the first deaths we see is from a bomb in a letter that's addressed to her, so she kind of feels guilty about this. Now, as the people around Mima are dying, the story kind of devolves into this fever dream. At points, you're not really sure what's real or what's part of the show she's filming. And there's even a bit of police procedural going on kind of in the background as these detectives are trying to figure out what's going on. And this story is all kind of taking place around the birth of the internet, in the late 90s. And a major component of the film is Mima's kind of online persona and this mysterious website that pops up that seems to be tracking all of her daily activities. And it really kind of just has this, early internet kind of like Matrix-y feeling to it, where, as the internet was starting out, people didn't really know what was going to be done with it. I remember that time as a kid, having, dial-up internet, and the internet in its infancy was kind of scary to some people, I think, and I think this movie is a little bit of a comment on that. But it's also just like a really cool, dark 90s twisted thriller. Even though it's animated, I would highly recommend this. I think, especially to anyone with even the smallest amount of fame, I think this movie would be terrifying for. But yeah, I think this is just a really, really good example of how animation can be adult and have adult themes and be super entertaining at the same time.
Number 3.
All right, and number 3 on my list this year is Martin from 1977 and directed by George Romero. I've been watching a lot of vampire movies lately. I just saw Robert Eggers' Nosferatu in theaters a couple days ago. I made a video on Shadow of the Vampire. If you haven't seen that, maybe go check it out. And just the other night, I watched Tony Scott's Hunger for the first time. So yeah, I've just kind of been like in a vampire mood lately. But this one's great. I did do kind of a full-on review of this in one of my other videos. I'll try to put a link in if I can. So maybe go check that out if you haven't watched it yet. But yeah, all three of those other movies that I mentioned, vampire movies, are all great in my opinion, but Martin is still probably my favorite, even over Eggers' Nosferatu. I think I like this one just a little bit more. The story of Martin follows a young man named Martin, obviously, who believes himself to be a vampire, but to the audience, you're not really sure if he is or not. You know, maybe he's a vampire, maybe he's just a mentally unstable individual who thinks that he needs to drink blood to survive. At the beginning of the film, Martin moves in with his cousin, who also believes he's a vampire. But his idea of a vampire is kind of different than what you normally think of. He kind of thinks of it more as just like a curse that kind of runs in the family. I think he mentions that, you know, this has happened a few other times. But he believes that it's kind of just this curse that needs to be cleansed. Because Martin believes he's a vampire that needs to drink blood to survive, but he doesn't have any supernatural powers, he uses needles with some sort of sedative to subdue his victims, and then he uses razor blades to cut them and drink their blood. But with the female victims, Martin doesn't just drink their blood, he also assaults them sexually while they're sedated. The violence is intimate, it's intense, he's kind of talking to his victims as they're being sedated and passing out, and they're struggling. And it's just kind of strange because throughout the rest of the movie, Martin really does just come off as this kind of soft-spoken guy who does appear to show remorse for his victims. Now, I think the question the movie is asking you the entire time you're watching it is Martin a vampire, or is he just this mentally unstable individual? And regardless of that answer, I think this movie is super interesting, and I highly recommend it if you're into, you know, weird kind of quirky vampire movies, or even, you know, just serial killer movies, because, you know, it's kind of unclear whether he's actually a vampire or not. I hope that's not spoiling the movie. I think this movie is super worth a watch, and it's one of my favorite first time watches this year for sure, and one of George Romero's most unique and best films that I've seen.
Number 2.
And number 2 on my list this year is Danny Boyle's Shallow Grave from 1994. This is actually his first feature film, and people are kind of bringing him back into the spotlight now with the trailer for the new 28 Days Later movie just dropped. I think 28 Years Later, I think it's called. But yeah, so this is actually his first movie, and I think this one's great. Now, Shallow Grave is a darkly comedic thriller starring Ewan McGregor, Kerry Fox, and Christopher Eccleston, I think is how you pronounce his last name. But they are three roommates looking for a fourth. Now, when the three finally decide on their new roommate, the man moves in and he decides to off himself right away. I think it might be the first night that he's there. And the three find the body along with a briefcase full of money, and rather than call the police, they decide to dispose of the man's body and keep the money for themselves. Now, without giving too much of the story away, they decide to draw straws to see which of the three of them has to do kind of the dirty work when disposing of this body. And I'll just say it kind of ends up weighing heavy on the one that ends up having to do the dirty work. Now, while they decide what to do with the money, the flatmates start to become paranoid of the police finding out what they did, who might come looking for the money, but mostly paranoid of each other and what they might do. This reminds me a bit of movies like Fargo or No Country for Old Men. I'm a big fan of Danny Boyle. I like a lot of his movies. The 28 Days Later series is great. Sunshine, I think, is super underrated. But it is crazy to think that this was his first real feature film. I know he had a few TV movies that he did before this, but for being his first real feature, this movie is great. This is a big time recommend if you're into thrillers, and especially British crime thrillers.
Number 1.
Now, number 1 on my list this year is Bound from 1996, directed by the Wachowskis, the sibling directors who brought us The Matrix, one of my favorite movies and franchises of all time. Now, this stars Jennifer Tilly, Gina Gershon, and Joe Pantoliano. And this is really just kind of a sexy gangster heist crime movie. Jennifer Tilly's character Violet starts a romantic relationship with Corky, played by Gina Gershon, behind her mid-level gangster boyfriend Caesar's back, and decide to rip him off together when he comes home with a bag full of money one night. Caesar, played by Joe Pantoliano, does a great job as the paranoid, jealous gangster boyfriend. And I can't think of a better duo than Gershon and Tilly, kind of getting real hot and heavy and giving great performances of their own. Bound really is a super fun watch. It's so well executed. Gershon and Tilly kind of being these secret, unassuming secret lesbian lovers, kind of putting this plan together and executing it. It really makes it just such a fun watch. And yeah, Pantoliano and his gangster buddies are just like very hateable, so you're rooting for Tilly and Gershon the whole time. And it's really, really well done. And Bound really is kind of dripping in the Wachowski style, from the steamy sexiness to the way the story's told and the way the camera moves and all the editing techniques. You really do kind of just like you can really feel like the DNA of the Matrix kind of like being formed in this movie while the Wachowskis are directing this. This really is one of the best crime thrillers I've seen in quite a while, and it's just super impressive that the Wachowskis were able to pull this off, being their first film. And yeah, I highly recommend this if you're a fan of crime thrillers, steamy, sexy crime thrillers. And even more so if you kind of want to dig in and kind of see the roots and the beginning DNA of the Matrix and the Wachowski style. I super recommend this movie. It's really good. All right, yeah, and as promised, yeah, I got 3 quick honorable mentions here. First one is Frankenhooker. This is just a really fun, quirky, goofy, over the top, Frank Henenlotter directed, just a goofy horror comedy about this guy who's trying to put his dead girlfriend back together using the body parts of hookers. This one is just it's just a riot, super funny, super recommend this if you're into goofy horror movies. And one other that I can't believe it took me this long to watch, this one is a classic, especially for the holiday season, and that is Black Christmas. This is a precursor to Halloween. So if you're into very creepy holiday horror films, I would highly suggest this one. And it actually really is pretty creepy. The guy on the phone, it kind of starts that whole, trope of the guy, the call is coming from in the house. And yeah, there's some really good performances in this. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed this one. So if you've never seen Black Christmas, definitely check it out. Maybe wait till next Christmas to watch it. But yeah, this one is actually creepy, and it was a great first time watch for me. Alright, and my last honorable mention is going to be Messiah of Evil. If you're into kind of slow burn, just kind of creepy, very atmospheric horror movies, I would highly recommend this one. It's kind of slow, but I think the vibes and kind of like the cinematography alone kind of make this movie worth a watch. I really enjoyed Messiah of Evil. If you can withstand kind of the slow burn 70s style, this movie is great. Very cool, creepy vibes. Alright, there you have it, folks. That's my top 5 first time watch blind buys of the year. Let me know down in the comments if you've seen any of these movies. What do you think of them? Do you have a list of your top favorite first time watches this year, or maybe your blind buys? I know some people have strong opinions about buying movies blind, but I do it a lot. So yeah, with that, I'll just say thanks for watching the video, and I'll catch you in the next one.